Hi everybody. Happy Sunday. See if we can get everything up here so I can see it. We thought I'd go early. I'd go a minute or so early to get things set up here. Hopefully everybody will be able to hear me soon. I'll type up something to see if I can see the comments, hopefully. Oh, we're getting a few people coming in. So make sure you say something when you come in so I know you can hear me okay. Trying to get my camera organized here. Oh, good. Hi, Denise. Hi, Lynn. Yeah, I'm really excited about this class. This has been, you know, when I first saw Love Notes, I was like, oh, that's cute, but, you know, I don't know that I'll ever do it. Well, I saw it live for the first time, and I thought, you know what, this is so cute. I really have enjoyed doing this, and I actually made, you know, I made two of them. So I have one done, and then I have another top done, and then I'm going to do, I'm going to do two wall hangings. So the wall hanging is what I'll show you tonight too. Finished stabilizer, ran out. Good thing I have more. Oh. Yeah, you know, Patricia, I buy it by the bolt now. That Shape Flex, I buy it by the bolt because I go through so much of it. Oh, your computer's acting up. Got a bunch of people here. Yeah, so anyway, the wall hanging, I thought the top row of this made a really cute wall hanging. So I made a wall hanging out of the top row of it. I don't know if you can see it. And so the last block is just a plain one where you hang the pictures. And then it's got the little cameras and stuff. And I just thought it made a really cute wall hanging. So I'm making another one of these. And this is the one that we're going to do I'm going to show you tonight both ways of quilting. So we're going to quilt, like you can see, I don't know if you can see this if I get a little closer, you can see these are the Kimberbell quilting designs. And these are, you can buy it, Kimberbell, it's mykimberbell.com now. They have two websites, one for where they're selling the designs and one where you can see all the other designs. So it's mykimberbell.com, and the designs I'm going to show you here in a little bit were all purchased there. They're their quilting designs. They have quite a few now, and then they also have borders. So like this is a border design, and they're marked, and then there's the square designs, that the rest of these are like square designs. Okay? So we're going to talk about both methods of quilting here. I've really enjoyed doing both. I made my bigger quilts with the traditional quilting. I prefer my bigger quilts to be quilted through the back. And when you do the quilt as you go, it still is very nice looking, but as you can see, there's no quilting on the back of it. I just stitched in the ditch, and I think most of you know what that means. So I took monofilament thread and I stitched in the ditch. So next week we'll actually talk more about the assembly of the quilt as you go, and today we're going to talk about the embroidery. But we have to talk about quilt as you go because you have to choose when you start your quilt how you want to do it. So if you want to do it as quilt as you go, you need to choose that right from the beginning because the designs, the quilting parts, go under the applique parts. And then otherwise they're the same. You would just do the quilting underneath, and then the appliques are for either the traditional quilting or for the quilting as you go. So either way, okay? So we have a lot to get through tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started right away. I wanted to talk to you first, just a little, briefly. We went over this when we wish you a Merry Christmas, and if you need more detailed instructions about cutting and how to read the graphs in the book, and also how to number your bags with your fabrics and everything, then go back to June and watch that We Wish You a Merry Christmas video, because it will go into great detail. I took a whole hour and just talked about the cutting and stuff to make it a little more clear for people. I do this the same way each time, and thanks, Denise. Hey, Denise, that's really cool. Could you share that? That would be awesome if you could share that to the group. Let me know when you're done. Denise is cataloging the videos. It's really hard to find them, and I don't know if you realize it, but Facebook has changed. So the videos, just so you know, are under more. Like at the top, there's a button that says more, and it's under media now. They've changed. Facebook's getting screwy. So anyway, all right. So we're going to talk about just a little bit about the cutting and stuff, so that you understand. And I think we've done this a couple times now with the the pillow, and also a couple of quilts now. So the cutting is very much the same for all of them. The one thing I did wanted to remind you is I uploaded this to the Dropbox, this mystery quilt thread colors, and the love notes, and it had the colors for several of the different brands of thread, like Isocord, Floriani, Exquisite, and then I made a list of my brother colors that I used. So that is up on the group in the Dropbox, and it's under it's just under Love Notes Thread Colors, I think is what I named it. It's just a PDF file. Okay. So that way you have the colors that's the colors I used because I had a kit. And if you need to use what I normally do when I'm doing colors, honestly, I just kind of match my fabric. So you can do whatever works for you, but I wanted to put these thread lists up for you. Okay. So we're going to go into we're going to talk a little bit about this first part of the book. And the first section of the book talks about bagging and cutting your fabric. So I do it a little differently than what they tell you on this page 2 here. What I do is I take my fabric list and I number it 1 through whatever it is. This one had 26 different fabrics in it, and I number them 1 through 26. And then I go over here to my cutting diagram, and I number the fabrics by, I put my number here so I have them organized. And then I cut them and put them in a bag numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Okay, and that's just a kind of in a nutshell. The other thing that some people do, and that's what they're explaining here, is that if you want to go further and then take each block and put it in a baggie under the name of the block, you can do that as well. So it just depends on which works for you. I usually just do the numbers and just pull the blocks as I'm going. There's not that many, and it doesn't take me that long. So whichever works better for you. But I like to number these, so when I go over here to my cutting diagram, which is on page 6, then I can match my fabrics to my numbers over there, and I put a number up here, and then I just put them in a bag by the number. So whichever works for you for organizing. There are quite a few fabrics, and sometimes it's just easier to organize it in some way so that it's not like laying loose on your table and you get everything mixed up. Okay? So I wanted to talk a little bit about that, but I did do a video that was more detailed for We Whisk You Merry Christmas. And it's done the same way. I did it the same way. So you can go back and watch that one if you need a little bit more information about the cutting part. The cutting is pretty easy. The diagrams are very visual, and you just need to look at the pictures and cut what it tells you to cut. Okay? So I don't think most of you can understand the cutting part. It's pretty easy. Okay. So at this point, we are ready to start embroidering. And at this point, then, you need to decide how you want to make your quilt. If you want to do your quilt as you go, like my wall hanging here, okay, like my wall hanging with all my quilt as you go. You put this down here so you can see a couple of these other blocks, okay? These are done and quilted before you put the quilt together, all right? Or if you want to do it traditionally. So if you want to do this as quilt as you go, and when you choose that, which method you want, you're also going to be choosing which stabilizer you're using. So most of the time I've shown you how to do these things with the traditional quilting, and the traditional applique. So the way they do it in the book is they have you take your background fabrics, and put a piece of shape flex on the back of your background fabric. All right, now the little cameras had these really light colored little toppers on them, so they had you put a little piece of shape flex on the back of that just so that the darker color wouldn't bleed through that real light color. And as I remember, there was a couple of little, you did that on some of the pieces for the little letters on the mailboxes and for the little bird. There was 2 or 3 other little pieces. So read the direction. It tells you to put some shape flex on these light colored fabrics just to keep it from bleeding through the darker color on the background. Okay? So this goes for either the traditional method or the quilt as you go method. You're still going to use the shape flex on the back of your background fabric for either one. So that makes it easy. It's the same for either one. Okay? Now, if I were going to do this traditionally, I would then take, and you know I do this kind of strange, I would take this fits in a 5x7, so what I'm going to do tonight is this camera up here. We're going to do the one that says say cheese. Okay? And I would then take my fabric with my back, or my shape flex in the back. I'd take my fabric glue pen, and I would put my glue on here. Okay, I'm not going to do it this time because I'm going to use this for the other method. And then I would take it into the middle of my tearaway stabilizer. So if I'm doing this traditionally, I use tearaway stabilizer, and then I'm going to stick it down to my stabilizer, and then I'm going to take my 5x7 hoop. This is already hooped. I'm going to take my 5x7 hoop, and I'm just going to hoop this fabric and the stabilizer in the hoop, and I'm ready to go for my applique. So we've done this quite a few times, and I'm sure that makes sense to you. I like to glue this down to the paper because it seems like it holds, everything stays nice and flat then. I don't get a lot of wrinkles. And I just use my fabric glue stick, stick it down to my tearaway, and put it in my hoop. And then away I go for my embroidery. Okay? So that's the traditional method. So, if you give me a second here, this is my top. Pull this back so you can see a little bit. This is my top. This is my second top. Okay, here's that camera. We're going to do this camera. Okay, this is the traditional method. And there is my camera block from the back. There's my, my shape flex. And I just did my applique piece. And I did the same thing with all the other ones. Like this, here's my, just click. Here's my little typewriters. They're a little further down in the quilt. Here's my little letter. Okay, so these are the traditional ones that just have the shape flex on the back, and I've just done them with the tearaway stabilizer, and I tear it away. Okay? So this one we are going to put together, all together, and then we will quilt it. So we will do this in a couple of weeks, but I've got it all. I've got my second top all put together. On these, I don't normally put the shape flex on the plain blocks that don't have any embroidery on them. I don't feel it's necessary. You can if you want to, just so that it's the same. But I don't notice any difference when I quilt it. So like this one, you can see this block here at the end doesn't have any stabilizer on the back. Neither do any of these like little 2x2 squares. And but if I embroidered on it, I put the shape flex on it. Okay, that's the way I do it. Like my little, whoops, second here, I got it stuck on the needle. My little piece blocks here, these little piece blocks, there's no stabilizer on the back of those either. Okay, just the ones that I'm going to embroider on. All right, so, but the embroidery is the same for either one. So there's my top. Get that laid out over here. I just dropped my scissors again, just a second. I drop my scissors a lot. Okay. So, tonight I want to show you about these awesome Quilt As You Go designs that Kimberbell has. So you have to buy those direct from Kimberbell on their website, and then you can download them immediately. Okay? In fact, there was a new one today. It was a patriotic one, because a lot of you saw that really cool Main Street, the Main Street Celebration bench pillow. They have some new kind of patriotic ones for that. So I actually downloaded that one today. All right, so I have chosen for this one to do the Quilt As You Go. So for that one, I have to do a different kind of stabilizer. For this one, I'm going to use my no-show mesh, the soft mesh, and it's going to stay in the quilt. Now, I have my other piece done, so you can't see the backing, but here is one of the blocks I made today. So you can see, here's that no-show mesh on the back, okay? And that's going to stay right in the block, all right? Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, I have 2 books. So here's my book for my applique piece. So this is my regular book. But then I have a book that I got for all of my, I made a little book for myself with all of my quilting designs in it. So when the quilt designs come down from the website, let's do the one that we're going to do here. It was the Chevron. I think that was the second one. Here we go. This little closer. So you get an instruction sheet with each one. Now there's going to be either 14 or 28 designs in each one of these because some of the designs are directional. And as you can see, the chevron could be up and down or side to side. Okay? So for those, they give you 28 designs. They give you the horizontal and the vertical. So I'll show you how you can choose which one you want. You can have either one. And then some of the ones that are not directional, you just get the 14. And you get all the designs, and then you get these pages of instructions. Okay, there's about 4 pages for each design set you get. Okay? And how you decide which one of these you need to use. There's a bunch, and this is a little confusing, but after you kind of get the hang of it, it's not a big deal. I'm going to go to my book first for we're going to do say cheese here, okay? And I'm going to go to the book, and the first thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to say, okay, it is going to be trimmed. I'm going to find out how big it's going to be finished or trimmed. So trimmed, it's going to be 4.5 by 6.5. So I know then that when my finished block size after I take my seam allowances out will be 4 by 6 because it's a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. Okay. So these block designs are set up in the file by the finished block design. So since I was cutting this when trimming it to 4.5 by 6.5, I need to go find my 4 by 6 design, okay? So that, it tells me here on this first chart that 4 by 6, that's the finished size of the block. I need to cut some batting. So see, I'm going to need batting for these. Besides the applique pieces, I need batting. So here's my piece of batting, and it told me on the 4 by 6 to make my batting 5 by 7. Okay, so the chart's pretty, laid out really well. Okay. Then it says that my cut size is going to be 6.5 by 8.5. So if you can't figure out how big if you don't know, not sure, you can always go just to the end and say, this is how big they tell me to cut the block. You're going to cut them all the same, then you can always start with the 6.5 by 8.5 inch block and then work back, okay? But I just take the 1/2 inch out in my head, okay? So I'm going to cut my batting then, 5 by 7, and I had 3 of these little blocks, so I cut 3 pieces of batting, one for each block. And then the next one down, these are the applique block ones, and then the next little section down will be, there's some border blocks as well in these. There's some narrower, skinnier ones, so you can use them as border blocks, and those are down here, okay? So they tell you about how big to make your designs and everything, and how big your design's going to end up, and then how big to cut your batting and all that. So there's 2 charts. One for the border blocks, like the skinny long ones, and then one for the applique blocks, which would be like your traditional squares, okay? Now, I did have a little trouble with one of the blocks, and we'll talk about that next week. I'll talk about one of them this week and one next week. But a couple of these blocks in this first row were very long, and so I actually had to use border designs for those because they didn't have the right size in the block sets, okay? So this block, cut it 4.5 by 6.5, so it's going to finish 4 by 6. Cut my batting 5 by 7, okay, and then I'm going to turn over here and look. And there are 2 techniques with this. The first technique is when you're doing the applique and you have oversized fabric. Okay, that's what technique number 1 talks about. We will talk about technique number 2 next week. And what that is, technique number 2, is when you have a finished block size. For instance, that long block at the end of this row was cut to the size you needed, which was 6.5 by 12.5. Okay, that is finished. So there's 2 techniques to do this. The preferred method is technique number 1 with oversized fabric. But in this case, I don't have that. You would not have that, say, for instance, on your pieced blocks. Okay, so they give you 2 methods to do the block. So we're just going to talk about the embroidery or the applique side today, and then next week we'll talk about the second technique a little bit, okay? So I've checked my, my sizes. I know that I need to have my batting at 5 by 7. I've got my piece of fabric for the backing, and then I've got my applique pieces laying over here, okay? So does that make sense? These are the instructions are very laid out and very good. You do, like I said, I'm going to remind you again to put your shape flex on the back, even if you're doing the quilt as you go, okay? All right, so I've got my instructions, and then it also tells me then step by step how to do the quilting part. But we can do the quilting part and then do the applique right in the same design. Okay, so I'll show you how to set that up on the machine. All right, so this was the chevron. So let's show you how to set this up on the machine. All right. So I'm going to go into embroidery, and I want to quilt this first. So you want to bring your quilting design in first. So I'm going to go down to my pocket here and to my USB, and I'm going to go down to my Kimberbell quilting folder because I have all of these on the stick because I just bought all of them, and I figured then I could use whatever I wanted. Okay, they're not really expensive. They range from about $6 to $8, $9 for all the different sets, and then you can just go find ones you like. There are some that were specifically kind of done for love notes, like the borders and stuff. I'll show you those again in a little bit. And then there's several Valentine sets. So that's the ones I got first, and then I got the rest of them. So you can kind of do whatever you want with these, and you can mix and match, and they turn out really cute. So, okay, so I'm going to go down and find my Chevron 1. That's the one I wanted to use for this one. That's one. Yep, that's what I used. So I'm going to go to my embroidery files and my PES. Now, what's different about this one, and I wanted to show you this one. I think you can see it here, but here are blocks that are horizontal. The chevrons are horizontal, and the chevrons are vertical. So this one is directional, so they gave you 2 options, okay? Now, I know when I bring in that camera, I'm doing this in a 5 by 7 hoop, and my camera is going to come in this way. But when I put it in the quilt, I'm going to put it this way. So I am going to choose one with the chevrons going up and down. If you want them going the other way, that is perfectly fine. So whichever you like. And I also remembered that I have to have it 4 by 6. So that's my finished block. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to scroll down until I find my 4 by 6 blocks. You probably can't see the numbers too well. But these are the 4 by 6s. And I want my chevrons to be going up and down. Because that's the way my camera's going. So I'm going to choose the second one here with them going up and down. It came up on the design screen up here. And then I'm going to hit set. Now I'm ready to get my design. So now I'm going to hit add on my machine. I'm going to go back to my stick. And then I'm going to go down to Love Notes, because that's what I'm doing now, is Love Notes. So I'm going to go to the Love Notes folder. And this is section 1. Now, Love Notes originally was a mystery quilt, so you'll have 5, like when you bought the design, you'll have 5 little envelopes. The first one has the CD with all the designs in it, and then the other ones have an instruction page, okay? All of them have instruction pages. But they're done in sections on the CD, too, so that makes it easier. Okay, now for those of you who have smaller machines, there are some double hooping designs for this, because it can all be done in a 5x7, but you will need to double hoop some of these blocks. There's several blocks that are longer, okay? So I'm just going to click on embroidery files, because I know this is a smaller design, and section 1, and then I am looking for the one that says Say Cheese. So Say Cheese is right here. We're going to get Say Cheese. And what's neat about our machines is that the designs come in automatically centered. So here's my quilting design, and then my design came in centered. Okay, so I don't have to move anything or anything. Now I will talk to you before we quit tonight about a couple of the blocks in here that do require you to change the position of the design a little bit, because it needs to be moved lower in the block. And I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a minute once we get started. So once it's sewing, we can talk about those things while the machine's sewing. Okay, so I've got my quilting design. Then I have my applique design. All right, and they're both going to sew first the quilting design, then the applique design. All right, so we're going to set that, and I'm ready to go now. So I'm going to hit embroidery. All right, got to get my sets of instructions here. All right, so I've got in my hoop my commercial mesh. I just hooped that, and that's the only thing you hoop in there. And I have got white thread in the needle. I have bobbin thread in the bobbin. And the first thing that happens, and right now we are following the instructions on our quilting. Okay, so the first thing that's going to happen is a placement line for my batting, which of course now I've lost and I have to try to find it. Where'd it go? It's gone. Ah! Where did it go? It probably got, so here it is, I found it. It got stuck on something. All right, so we're going to go ahead and put our foot down, and we're going to do our placement line for the batting first. Now, of course, if I'm doing the traditional blocks, I would have already put this in on my tearaway stabilizer, and I would be doing the applique. I really had fun using these. I was a little bit leery about it, but I actually really enjoyed doing this. So, and we're going to be doing another bench pillow for Easter, and we're going to do the whole thing with Quilt As You Go, because the pillows are really fun as Quilt As You Go. All right, so then I'm going to lay my batting in here, and I'm just going to kind of hold it, and the second step is going to be the batting tack down. And we've done other things that are similar to this before. They do their designs and the way they run their like seam allowances just a little differently than some of the ones I've done. So I learned a new technique, and the borders are really fun to do. So that'll be next week. We'll do a border next week with the Quilt As You Go method, and those were really fun. But they had such cute designs, and I really did enjoy it. I was a little hesitant at first, and once I got going, I was like, wow, these are really cute. Okay, so now the next step is going to be we're going to trim the batting, and you want to trim this bulk out of here and trim the batting up next to the placement line, or the tack down line in this case. So we're going to trim the batting. Does anybody have any questions so far? Is everybody following me? Give me some thumbs ups or something to see if you're doing okay. I really, this method is very quick, and it does a beautiful job in the quilting. And you can do a lot of different things. Okay. A lot of the designs that they have are actually very similar to the ones that are already in our machine. So a lot of us have the design center in our machines. So this is very similar. Okay, so we've trimmed. Now the next section, you could skip this if you wanted to. This is the placement line for the fabric. Now you wouldn't have to do this because you're pretty sure where the fabric's going to go. But just for the way the design is, they do put a placement line in here. And I skipped it, and I thought, why are there 2 lines? But they did put a placement line. So this is the placement line for the fabric. But as you can see here, so as you can see right here, there is a 1/4 of an inch between this line and this line, so we're going to be actually kind of trimming it around this area. We're going to use the pop rulers to do that. But then there's this little gap here, a 1/4 of an inch for when we go to sew it together. All right, so then I'm going to lay my fabric over my batting and over my placement line, and I'm going to try to get it as centered as I can. Now, some of the fabrics in this quilt, just so you know, have stripes and stuff, so just be careful getting them as straight as possible, otherwise your lines are a little strange. Okay, I have to be real careful doing these striped fabrics. Okay, so we got this in there, pretty straight, and then the next step is going to be the tack down line for the fabric. Yeah, this has probably been one of my favorite quilts. I was, when I first saw it, I thought, oh yeah, that one's really cute, I'll probably do it sometime, but I have really enjoyed it. So I don't have this newer machine, so I can, yes you can, Colleen, in your machine. You can combine them in your machine. You can combine them right in the machine. Mine says add. Yours is something, yours might not say add, but you can combine your designs. First quilting the background and then going to step. Yeah, you can, in your machine, you can add, but I can't remember on your machine if it's the add, if it says add, or there's an add button, but I can't remember if it says add or something else, but yes, you can. That machine has editing abilities. Okay, so now I'm ready for the quilting. It's magic, so now here's the quilting. Okay, I think most of you have machines that have this editing ability that you can add both the designs at the same time. Yeah, Colleen, if you give me a second, well, when we get going, I will go over and tell you what your button says, but it may not say add. I've got a machine just like yours over on the other side of the room. All right, so we're going to do the chevrons. So I'm really anxious to try the Easter pillow all done this way. Oh, yeah, so you found it, Colleen? Yeah, I thought it said add on the new machine's relatively new. So the newer machines had add, and then the older machines had another name, and I can't remember what it said. So the only machines that didn't have the add feature, like you could add more designs or edit and add more designs together, some of the old ones, like the little tiny 5x7 machines, did not allow it, like your machine does. But you could do it the way you did it too. That would work just fine. Just do the quilting first and then do the design. Okay? So now we've got our, see, quilting's all done. Isn't that cool? I'll hold it a little closer. See, doesn't it look nice? With the chevrons on there? They have a lot of options available. I mean, I have this whole book's full. This book, I've got all of them, and this is all of them. And they're all really, really cute. So there's a lot of variety. Okay, so now I'm into the quilting. So this is going to be that, now I'm into I got my quilting done, so now I'm ready for applique. So the first step of my little, I'm just going to leave my white thread in. And the first step is going to be, we're going back to the other book now. Here, I'm back to my book, my regular book. And I'm just going to applique my little pieces on here for my camera. So the first piece is going to be this little bottom piece. You've got about 12 of them. Yeah, they're really cute, and there's quite a few of them, and they're not that expensive. They really aren't. Because when I first saw them, I thought, oh my gosh, those are so expensive. But it's not just one design. It's like either 14 or 28. So you get a lot of designs. So I'm going to lay my fabric over my placement line. And then I'm going to tack down my polka dot fabric. I don't usually tape my fabrics down, I usually just kind of hold them. If you're worried about your fingers, you can sure just tape them. But yeah, so these quilting designs are on the mykimberbell.com website, so that's where you want to go to find them. Now, they just redid their website, so it's a little goofy. If you've had an account there before, you're going to have to, I had to do that today. I had to make a whole new password and everything. It was, they upgraded their website, I think it was last week, because it was down for a few days. Because I went back a couple days in a row and it was down, so they must have been updating it. So it is a little different. The only bummer is they don't take PayPal anymore. I like to pay with PayPal, but they don't take PayPal anymore. Okay, so there is my first applique. The next step will be the applique for the top of the little camera here. So I'm going to do my placement line. But yeah, we'll talk about the technique 2 with the blocks that are already cut to size, because there's quite a few of them in this quilt, actually, like the all those little 2x2 blocks, and there's quite a few of them. So we'll talk about that next week, because you'll probably be busy doing applique blocks this week. So, okay. So then, now this one's one of those striped ones, so be careful that you get it straight, otherwise it's going to look weird. And this is the one that had the little piece, whoops, second here, I think I've got a little knot on the end of my thread here, so let me rethread the machine here. I think I had a little knot on the end. I think I need a new blade on my cutter. Alright, there we go. Oh, it's happier now. So this is the ones I always have to be a little careful with, all these stripes. I have to make sure I try to get them straight. Looks like I did pretty well this time. Okay, and we're going to trim this one. So either way you decide to do this quilt, your quilt will be adorable. Because we're going to do it both ways so that everybody can see the quilting method again. I like to quilt with my design center and on my machine, but this has been really, really fun. So we will be doing some more like this, because I like the pillow. I think I like the pillows this way. Then I don't have to quilt them. You won't be. If I was going to make a table, like a table runner or a wall hanging, I probably would quilt it. But if a pillow, I probably won't. Okay, so then the next step is going to be the little round circle down here for the camera. So I've been having fun today. I've been working on my second wall hanging here. Okay, so there's my placement line. And I just left my white thread in for all of this for the piecing. It works really well for the, the applique. And I'm going to go ahead and tack down my, this is the piece for the background of the camera lens. I was breaking needles today because I had a spool of white thread that was almost empty, and it must have had a little rough spot. So if you just turn your head for a second, I broke a needle, I think 3 times today. So I finally just threw the rest of it away. Okay, so now I'm going to trim this close to the stitches. I've done this block a lot of times now. I think I've done 12 of these. Since I made 2 quilts and 2 wall hangings. So I kind of know the steps. I don't have to look at the instructions anymore. Now, the one thing I like about the instructions on this also is, if you look at these instructions a little closer, did you notice that the steps match up with the numbers? When you're doing the quilt as you go, you're going to have extra steps on your screen, but the numbers, if you're just doing this traditional way, the numbers match up with the steps, so I like that. Then they also gave you your little color boxes here to help you with what color they used in the original pattern. So that's nice, because and then I just wrote, you can see I wrote my color numbers in here so I remembered, so I could go back and reference that, okay? All right. All right, so we got the black part done, and now we're going to do, this is going to be the little heart in the center of the camera lens. And at this point, we're going to put a piece of that embroidery leather in the center there, and that's what the little heart is. So I want to change my color of my thread now to match my embroidery leather, and so I had a one called medium rose. So I'm going to put that on now, because this is going to be raw edge applique, and it will not be covered. The rest of these are all going to be traditional applique with satin stitches. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on here, and these sometimes I do tape down, but this one stayed pretty well for me, so I'm going to hold it just to get a few stitches in it. Sometimes this leather and the glitter vinyls kind of move a little bit, so sometimes I tape those. Yes, Lynn. Lynn asked me which ones I used. Now, I used, Lynn asked which quilting designs I used. I just did the top row. So you can get, as many of the ones for the blocks as you want. But I used the Chevron. I used Chevron 1, Wave 1, and then the plaid on the 3 blocks that I did. And then I bought the borders. Let's see, these were the Valentine Borders. Let me go back to my borders here. They're clearly listed as borders, so I bought, and then there's another one called Words. That's kind of a Valentine one. It says Smitten and Love, and those are really cute ones for this one too. But that was called Valentine, and then the borders were called Borders, Valentine 1, and Valentine 2. And then there was one other one that was really, really cute. I also used one called Lines 2 in this one. Let's see. But there was another one that was the little birds and stuff. Do you remember the name of that one, Lynn? There was one that was called, oh, here it is, Hearts. Hearts. There's one with the hearts. Hearts one. And I think the other one was just called Valentine 1. Yeah, Valentine. Words, Valentine. So there's a bunch of them that are Valentine's-y, but then there's all these other ones like Waves and all the other ones. So you just kind of need to look through them and see which ones look interesting to you. So then you can kind of pick. So I'll show you the ones I did. I did one of my first row with the lines, one with the chevrons, and one with plaid. And then I used some of those border ones that I told you for the bigger blocks and the borders. So it just depends on what you want what designs interest you. Okay, so I'm going to show you a new pair of scissors. I've been struggling cutting this embroidery leather because you can see it's white on the back. And when I use my curved scissors, I have a hard time getting them angled, up and down enough to get this cut without getting like a white ridge all the way around. So one of the videos I watched on Kimberbell, they were using these micro tip scissors that have these little tiny tips. And Kimberbell has a scissor set now that has these. And these are micro tips. But the other scissors in that set are like the little duckbill applique scissors, And I'm not a big fan of those because I can get a lot closer with these. So I thought about ordering the set, and then I thought, well, I can just get the microtips. So I'm going to carry these at the store. I do not have them yet. I will get them, and these are microtips. Floriani makes these. And these are super thin at the tip. And you can really get, these work really great for jump clips also, because you can really get into those little teeny jump clips with these. But I also found that they work better with the embroidery leather, because I'm going to put this a little closer. I can turn these sideways a little bit more, and I can just use those little teeny tiny tips, and I can get them cut so I don't get that white line around, because I can tip them. See, I can tip them so that they're straight up and down, and I can get a much nicer edge. This embroidery leather, I've been using it quite a bit lately, and it's just a little harder to trim, and I just needed a different tool. So these little microtip scissors, and I will get these up on the website. I just need to make sure that Floriani still has them. And I think they do. I just wanted to make sure, and I forgot to do it last week. But they will be up there. So I can get around this with these little tips, and these work really well for the jump clips too, because they're really tiny on the tips. I'm still not very good at the leather, so don't mind me. I'll clean it up a little bit. But these work so much better. And see, I'm not getting that white ridge around the edge, because I was always having a white ridge because it's white on the backing. Okay, I just need to clean it up a little bit, but I'll do that after class when I don't have a camera between my arms here. Okay? So there is my little heart that's done with the applique. But these are awesome. These are called microtip scissors, and I will get these up on the website for you, but because Floriani has them, and they have little bigger rings down here too, so if you have bigger fingers, you don't get your fingers stuck in them, so they are really nice. Okay, so I'll get those up there. They're not super expensive, as I remember. Okay, so now I am ready to do some sewing here, and then we'll talk about a couple of other blocks while some of this stuff is sewing. So the next step is the flash bulb on the top of this little camera, so I'm going to put my white back in. Oops. So while this is sewing, this one doesn't take very long, but the next one takes longer. So you were asking me which ones I used. Okay, so these are the other quilting designs I use. This one's called Wave 1. This was Wave 1. Oh look, yep, Wave 1 on this camera. This camera, I put the plaid on. This one's called Plaid, and I think there's only one plaid. Oops, get that out of the way. This one is one of the little, this is the lines. This one was lines 2. We'll change the color here, but I think this was lines 2. But if you go through and look at some of them, this was lines 2. So this was kind of the lines weren't straight, they were all zigzaggy. Or they were all kind of crisscrossed, I should say. Alright, so the next step will take a little bit longer. We'll talk a little bit more about the designs while that's going on. This one is, this is the top of the camera. So I got to change to black here. Got too many colors up here on the top. So we'll do the black. All right. And let's see, this one here. And this was a really long skinny block, so I had trouble finding one long enough for this, so I used a border design for this. This was one of the border designs. And this one was called Border. This is one of the Valentine Borders. This was Valentine Border 1. So Border Valentine 1 is what it's called. Okay, because this one was longer, so I noticed I had a little trouble. There was a couple of these blocks that were really long, and so I had to use border designs to quill them, but it worked just fine. Okay, and then the other block that's over here, I'll bring my other block over, or my quilt over. This one here, underneath my pictures. This is my mom and dad. So there's my mom's graduation picture, the last picture I have of them together. And then this is my dad's graduation picture. But this block here was also a border design with the hearts on it. It was really cute. It's hard to hold it up here. There we go. Really cute with the big hearts on it, okay? That one was Border Valentine 2, I believe. Let me look. That one should be the next one. I think I skipped the page here. Yeah, Border Valentine's 2. So I used that one for that one. Okay, so then the next step is going to be the satin stitch around my camera. And that's going to be my gray, so I'll go ahead and put my gray on. Hopefully. It's always good that I can thread the machine fast. All right. So then we'll work on that. And then the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was in a couple of the blocks in the quilt, actually there was 3 blocks, so like in the section number 3, I believe, let me go back down here to section 3, that's where the typewriters are, these typewriters, and they tell you to, the instructions are very clear, except they use, before they put these little buttons on the typewriter and these little things, they tell you to put, and they give this to you in your embellishment kit, this topping stuff, and I can't say that I was particularly excited about it. It was very hard to get off, and it's kind of thick. Basically what they did is they put this down so that you wouldn't see the black through your white keys on the typewriter, but I didn't notice really any problem with that, so I just didn't do it. I did one, my first one, and then I didn't use any of the rest of it. I just found it harder to get off than it was worth, and I didn't really think it was necessary. So you might want to try it, but it's hard to remove. That's what I had trouble with. So anyway, I wanted to tell you about. That's for the typewriters, but I just didn't use it. I'll have a piece that maybe I'll need it for something else, but it's kind of thick and it's a little hard to get off. So it's like a permanent tapping is what they call it. Okay? And then a couple of the designs, like there's a lot of them are in the 4th section. These little mailboxes. So you notice that the mailbox then is at the bottom of the block. Okay? So when you bring in your quilting design, if you're doing the quilt as you go ahead and bring your quilting design in first. And those are a little bigger block. Those are, let's see where the trimming instructions are. Those are if they finish 6 by 8. Bring in your quilting design, and then bring in your mailbox and move it down to the bottom line, because the bottom line is basically going to be the sewing line, and bring it all the way down. And then these actually, if you read the directions, you cut right through the satin stitches off the bottom. So if you read the directions for the trimming, you'll know how far down you need to move it when you're doing the quilt as you go. Okay, so that's one of the ones you have to move. There's 3 of those. Change the color here. I think I need to have pink now, so we can finish our block. Okay, here's the pink. And then one of the one of the cameras has a green top, so I used my green on that one. But I used the pink on, there's two with pink and one with green. And then the other block I wanted to mention to you that needs to be moved, and you know, it was funny, when I brought it up in the machine, it really didn't. It's in the second section. I'll find it here. Where is it? It's in the second section here. It's called Bunches of Love. And you can see this one's moved down to the bottom of the block. But when I brought this one up, the way they have it digitized, it actually does put it down to the bottom of the block where it belongs. But the mailbox I had to bring down lower on the block so that it will cut correctly. Okay, so just make sure you read your directions, and you can kind of, when you're doing the quilt as you go, you kind of have to look at the trimming to start the whole thing, to get your sizes and everything. But then you can see the picture here, like it says, well, we want to trim right along the bottom of that stem. Okay, so that's something I needed to know, because when I quilt as you go, I need to move things down. Then when I looked at my mailbox, it was kind of the same way. So here's my mailbox, and I knew that I had to cut through, and it actually says, with the post on the bottom edge of the ruler, post satin stitching will be sewn into the seam. So I actually put the post right down on the edge. So you don't have to put the satin stitch over the edge, you just put it down to the edge, and then that's actually going to be sewn into the seam then. Because the bottom part of the post is actually satin stitch, you just sew that into the seam. So just read the finishing directions if you're doing quilt as you go, so you know where your design needs to be. Okay, most of them will be centered, and they just come in automatically centered, which on our machines anyway, which is great. Okay, let's see if there was any of these other blocks that I thought you might need to know something. And if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, some of them, like this little, we just clipped, this one was actually had a cut line on it, so you just cut around the cut line. I'm going to show you how to trim the block here with the pop rulers. So you actually use the pop ruler the same way with the quilt as you go as you do with the with the traditional quilting. So either way. And let's see. Oh, and then I wanted to let you know tonight, when we're done, in section number 2 is this the piecing for these X and O blocks, and they were a little bit tricky. And I made a video on just piecing these blocks for you, and I will upload that because I used my laser light and to do some of the stitching, and it was really easy then. Okay, so I made a whole video when I was doing those, and then I will upload that a little later tonight for you. Okay. All right. So now the next section is going to be, we're going to go around the edge of our little camera lens here, and I made that in orange, I think. I have kind of a goldish orange. And I think it's nice that they're starting to give us some of the color, like thread charts, so that we have an idea of the colors they use. Now Kimberbell uses glide thread, so they often don't have the brother threads listed, but I just matched my, they often do have Floriani though, so I took my Floriani colors and then matched to my brother colors, so I'd have, you know, a matching, so I'm using the brother thread. So anyway, I will put up the video about these blocks here. They were a little tricky. I'm not a big piecer, and so sometimes these blocks are a little bit tricky for me, so I thought I'd put a little video up of something that I found that worked better for me. A lot of you have laser lights on your machines, so that really helps a lot. So, and let's see. Oh, and the other thing I'll tell you about this jar one, you put vinyl on this, it's great and everything. Be super careful with the iron. Do not touch the vinyl with your iron. Ask me how I know about that, because I have a terrible time with vinyl. And then they give you some choices in this too. So like one of these blocks, this was in section 2 also, the Sweet Talk block at the end of it, you can choose one. And so in one of the quilts I put the Valentine one that says Valentine Wishes in it. And then in the second quilt I made Always Better Together. So I used both blocks, but you just use one or the other. And then when you get to the typewriters, which are really fun, I already told you about that goofy, permanent topping stuff. I didn't really care for it, so I didn't use it. But they also give you, you make these little papers on here, and so you choose 3, and they give you 6. So I actually used 3 on one quilt and 3 on the other, so I could use them all. So it was kind of fun. Okay? And the other thing is there's a couple places they tell you to tape. Make sure you tape. Because if you don't, you'll have a problem, and I had that problem too. Okay? And yeah, and I just made a note I didn't use the permanent topping for the quilt. And you know, one of the places I taped was, it was on the typewriters. When you put the little paper that you make first, you make those first, and then you have to kind of tape it in. But you want to tape that down on the ends, on the top and the bottom. Otherwise, they kind of want to scoot around on you. So that's one of the things that I said. They said to tape, and make sure you do. All right, let's go. If there was anything else that I noticed in here. Okay, there are several blocks that are large. So I know a couple of you have small machines. So there are a couple blocks that you will have to multi-hoop, and they give you instructions for that. And one of the blocks is really fun. You put a zipper in it. And so it's very easy to do. It's really cute. It's the little mailbox at the bottom that you put this little zipper in. So it was really fun. So that one's, it's not hard. I guess that's why I didn't do that one, because you won't have any trouble doing it. You just have to do it in 2 pieces. Okay. So I think we're getting close to being done here. The other thing I wanted to show you is if you would like something to go with your little quilt. I think I put the link to this up earlier in December. This is the little pillow, the little Birdie Pillow. And this is up on the Kimberbell website, and this is a free design, and it's one of the little bench buddies that goes with the pillow, okay? So go get that, and you can add that to your quilt. All right, so we're on the last step, and there's a little gray border on here, and then we'll trim a block. The blocks their instructions are excellent, and the blocks these were not difficult blocks. There's quite a few blocks in this one. There's a lot of small blocks in it. So there was quite a few that were like 2-inch blocks, and like this is some of the assembly. But what I liked about it is what I did is as I sewed each section, I put together that section there. So I put it together as I went, so I had it all done. It was really nice at the end. So I didn't have to assemble the entire thing, except then I had to put the sashings in. So we'll talk more about that in a couple of weeks for the traditional one. Okay, we're just about done here, and then we'll do a little trimming. So you use the orange pop rulers either way, for either method you've chosen. And you just need to make sure you check your sizes on your pattern. It tells you what size to use. My little camera's open here so I don't make a mistake. Anybody have any questions? Is this making sense to everybody? So all of this applique stuff is the same, whether you choose the quilt as you go or the traditional method. Okay. So there's our camera. It's all done. Look cute with the little chevrons on it. It's all quilted, and then the back of it, there's that stabilizer, and we'll just leave that in the quilt. Okay, so we're going to pop this out of the hoop. If you give me just a second, I'm going to move my camera over here so you can see better, because we're going to do a little trimming. Hopefully, whoops, I can hear I'm stuck on something. Put the camera up here. I always have to try to figure out where's the best to put it when I bring it over to the other side of the cabinet here. All right, so make sure you can see me. What I'm doing. All right, so we'll get this out of the way. And as usual, I have my rotating mat. Patricia, no, it does not. I just have it in the Iowa City store. Patricia was asking if we had Shapewex in Davenport, and I don't. I just have it in Iowa City. Okay. So this is the rotating Martelli mat. So if you don't have one of these, this is an excellent thing to have when you're trying to do these blocks. And according to my instructions, I need to trim this 6.5 by 4.5. Okay, so I find my ruler, my orange pop ruler. That's my 4.5 by 6.5. You won't be able to see it; it's very hard to read. And I'm going to lay this down. Now, these blocks that have the, these tack down lines is going to be very close to those tack down lines, but they don't want you to trim by the tack down lines because they are slightly smaller than the size of the block. Okay. So we need to use the one that it says to use. To make sure you can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to center that, but I can use those tack down lines to help me get it centered nicely in the ruler. And then I am going to add my bigger one to give me something a little bit more to hang on to. Okay. Now remember, you need to, like I'm left-handed, so I'm going to have my rotary cutter in this hand. And I'm going to cut this direction because I'm cutting on the inside. I'm going to put my hand down, and I'm going to put the rotary cutter against the inside, and I'm just going to, and I have to be very diligent when I can't talk tonight, when I do this, because I find this difficult to trim on the inside. I'm still struggling a little bit, so I try to be very careful when I use them. I do really like these rulers, though, because everything turns out the right size. Okay. So this is my 4.5 by 6.5 inch ruler, and I got a little off on this one, but it'll still be fine. Must have slid up a little bit on me, but it's still the right size. I don't think I got this one edge. I need a new blade. Second here, let me get this edge up here. I need a new blade in my rotary cutter. I find that, especially using these rulers, I have to have a very sharp blade. There we go. Okay. So I would do the same thing if I was using if I was doing the traditional method. So here's my 4.5 inch by 6.5 inch block. And then when I sew this together, there's no batting in that outside 1/4 inch. And you can kind of see here, like here's where the actual batting starts right here. So there's a 1/4 inch, and when you go ahead to do the sewing it together, you don't have all that bulk in there then. Okay, so there's one of the blocks. Now a couple of these other blocks in this first row, I'll show you a couple of the other methods. Like this one has a cut line. So this one's going to end up being 2.5 inches, and it has a cut line right here. But then on the instructions, you have to measure from the center out. So this one ended up being, this is the last one on this page. This one ended up being 12.5 by 2.5. So you cut on this line, this green line there, a little bit closer so you can see. And then you're going to measure from this metal section, it's 12.5, so 6.25 to the end, and cut off on the end, and 6.25 on this end. So that's another type of quilting method, or cutting method, okay? And then this one had the cutting lines on it. So I'm actually going to cut, and I did them in white, so you probably can't see too well. But I'm going to cut right on that line, and it ends up being, I think, 2.5 by 6.5. Okay, so that's another one of the cutting methods in the quilt. And then these two, I'm going to use my pop ruler with. Okay, so that would be my 4.5 by 6.5 inch ones like this one. All right, so that's the 5 blocks that go in that first row. And then next week we'll talk about that technique number 2, because that last block is already cut to size. So this is that last block, that gray one, and it was already cut. Whoops, just knocked it off on the floor. This one is already cut to size. So we need to have a few blocks. We'll be doing some of those with the Quilt As You Go, okay, that are already cut to size. All right. Are there questions? Does this make sense? Getting started with this? And how many of you, you'll have to comment on the video later. How many of you are interested in doing the Quilt As You Go? Are a bunch of you going to do that, or are some of you just going to do the traditional method? Have you decided? Yes, Jan, that's fine. That if it scares you to cut on the inside, just go ahead and draw your lines, then cut on the lines. That works too. I've just learned to be very, very careful, and I'm usually very slow when I trim, because then I do fine with that. So, but that is a very good method to do it. Just to draw, you can just take a water-soluble pen, draw on the inside, and then cut on the lines, and that works fine too. They recommend that to people if you're worried about that. Okay, so here again is the little pillow. So go get this little freebie design to go with your quilt. This was a free one. You're going to do Quilt As You Go. And then here's my Quilt As You Go again. So we'll talk more about this next week. So what we're going to do is I'm going to quilt a border next week on this one. So we'll quilt the borders, and we'll talk about assembling it and everything. I'll probably assemble the center so that it's kind of assembled, and then we will quilt the border, so you know how to do that. The border quilting is really fun, so I think you'll like that. You're doing traditional, Patricia? Cool. And you won't have any trouble with the sizes of the blocks then, for sure, because there are a couple you'll have to hoop twice, but it is available for your 5x7 hoops. So, yep, you'll be doing Quilt As You Go, Sharon? Cool. Yeah, so I really like this. This turned out really good. And now the one thing I did do, and we'll talk about this next week when we go to put it together, the one thing I found, I've always had trouble with Quilt As You Go for backings, that the backing always wants to look wrinkly for me. But what I ended up doing with this is I put Shape Flex on the fabric before I did the stitch in the ditch. You see how nice and flat it is? So that seems to work for me. I'm going to put Shape Flex on the back of my backing fabric to give it some body so it doesn't get all wrinkly. Because that's one thing that bothered me with Quilt As You Go. My backing always looked kind of gnarly. It didn't look smooth, so this looks really smooth on the back. And that's with the Shape Flex on it. So, okay? So yeah, so we'll talk more about this. This is the one we're going to kind of finish next week with the borders. We'll do bordering, and then when I do the quilting on the other quilt, I actually did use some of these borders on the other quilt too, but I did it with the camera instead. So I didn't do it with the Quilt As You Go, I did it with the camera through all the layers. And then we might even do this border. I think Judy likes this border that I did on this one, so I think I might do this one on the other quilt instead of the border function in the machine. I might use this one, and we'll do that one too. I'll show you how I did that one too, okay? All right. So next week we'll be doing a little bit more on this one. We'll be doing some more Quilt As You Go, and then the third class will be on the traditional quilting, okay? Anybody got any other questions? Did you? I think you'll really enjoy the quilt. I like I said, when I first did it, I was like, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that's really, really cute, but I don't know that I'll ever do it. And then after I saw it, like, in person with the fabrics and all done, it was just adorable. And the blocks are so fun to do and very easy. So it'll be very entertaining and just, you know, it's not a hard quilt to do at all. So, okay. So I'll be seeing you next week. I will upload the video for the piecing blocks. And I will see you next week, and we'll do some more on the borders and the Quilt As You Go on the borders. But yeah, let me know which ones you're doing, because I'm anxious to see. And I also put up, like I said, I put up that celebration pillow and the kits and all that stuff, the fabric kits and everything. So if you want that, go ahead and go to the website and order it. So, but I'm anxious to work on this quilt some more and do another border or do another wall hanging. So, Awesome. Will I be lost? I have yet to order the kit. Oh no, do you want to order this kit, Donna? No, I've got this. Love Notes is up on the website, so there's the designs and the embellishment kit are up on the website, so you can order that as well. No, you won't have any trouble. You can go back and watch the videos. Okay? Isn't it a cute quilt? Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. So, all right. So thanks everybody. It was so nice to have everybody back again, because we had the class last week, but some of you don't do the software classes. So I'm welcome back everybody for the new year. So it's fun to be back, and we will have lots of fun this year. So I'll talk to you later, and if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. Good night, everybody.